I gotta be super careful to make sure I don't cut through the top side of the hood. Let's get to cutting. It says use guard on there. Arts and crafts. Paul really wanted to make this look like a factory stamp piece. So what we did is, why does fab work take so long? This is why. You talk to like a machinist. I know quite a few of them that'll tell you numbers don't lie. And sometimes that's true on old cars. Sometimes numbers lie. Wow, my micrometers were on today. Now, whenever I'm shaping anything like this, I like giving myself a nice center line. It just allows me to, what you can do is stick your thumb on the backside of the high. What did I say, 13 5/8? I hope that's right. And one of the cool things about using a file to do this rather than an angle grinder is it allows you to, I wonder how many people are gonna freak out and say how badly we ruined a factory hood. Why would you guys ever do that to this car? I just cut a big fucking hole in like a $5,000 hood. Oh, that's like $500 worth of that hood. All right, so we've got a few months until our SEMA deadline on our 62 Impala project. We are nearing completion on all the sheet metal fab. We've got a little bit left to go. This thing is really wicked. It's got a full custom chassis, full custom suspension. We've done it all here in-house. It's got a lot of custom sheet metal work done, inner fenders up front, full floor pans, big wheel tubs, the whole nine. This car is really, really badass. We've done quite a few videos on this car as far as the chassis goes, suspension goes, and a lot of the sheet metal work that we've done. So go check those out, give us a subscribe. That way you can stay up to date on everything that we're doing on here. We'll continue to put videos out until the car's totally done. But for today's video, we're gonna take you along the ride of building a hood scoop. Hey, are you done banging for right now?
Oh, I need to hammer some more.
All right, so we're out in the shop this morning. We just got the correct motor from Nelson Racing Engines in. We pulled the Mockup motor out, the Mockup trans out. We've got this one back bolted in where it belongs. We've got the correct Kong performance blower on here. It is quite shorter than the Whipple, but we are still gonna have to cut the hood. So today we're gonna take you along for the ride and let's get to cutting. I'm curious, once that structure's out of there, like how much lower it's gonna sit, because right now it's literally sitting on these up to about there. So I'm curious if those come out of there, if it's gonna sit down, like how much lower it's gonna sit down, you know what I mean? God, I wish I was a little bit taller. Here, trade me so I can get to the front of the car, will you? Did you grind the cardboard? So right now, I'm just cutting the inner structure out of here. I gotta be super careful to make sure I don't cut through the top side of the hood. So we'll get this cut out, we'll get this fit back down, and then we'll pop up underneath here. We'll make some marks so we know exactly where we need to cut on the hood so we don't overcut, make anything bigger or anything like that. It's a little hot in here, fogging up my glasses. Junk. Oh man, that is so close. About a ½ inch or so. What a bummer. All right, well, let's get to cutting. So basically what I want to start by doing is I'm gonna get under there, I'm gonna mark exactly where that blower sits, and I'm gonna cut the bare minimum to fit around that blower. So once that's cut and we know the hood will close all the way properly, we'll put the struts back in it. We'll make sure the cowl's in there, back sitting where it belongs. Make sure everything fits, body lines are good, everything's good. And as soon as that clears just around it, then we'll decide exactly where we want to build our scoop in here. And the goal with the scoop is really just to do something very subtle and just nothing that's like real like outrageous that sticks out majorly. We want it to look as close to factory as possible. So we want to make sure it's real nice and real clean and real simple. Let's crawl under this thing. Can you see any of this? Okay. All right, well, I should probably pull the hood off and do it off the car. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking and scribing where these hood hinges sit. The reason I'm doing that is because this thing's probably gonna be on and off the car 3 or 4 times at least. We've got the fitment really good right now. All our gaps are good. So by doing that, it'll allow us to, every time it goes back on, we'll go right back to those scribe lines, no problems. Okay, come up with it. This is a heavy ass hood, dude. Hey Garrett, do me a favor, come here and hold the front of this hood. Go up as high as you can go with it. It's a good thing you have long arms, otherwise that would not have worked. All right. Now let's flip it over. The front of that blower sits right there. So basically I'm gonna square off. So I made both of these mounts, right? Or not mounts. There you go.
Oh, is that what you were trying to think of?
It's the heat, I swear. Yeah, so I made both those marks right off the front of that blower. So for now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add like maybe 1/8 of an inch to that. Here, so you got a little clearance. And then I'm gonna use my straight edge here to line up against this. And then I'll flip it, do the same thing on this side, make a straight line. And then I'm probably only gonna take out about that much of it all the way across because that sits at an angle, right? So the only part of this that's really gonna hit is right about there. So I'm gonna start with that and then we'll throw it back on, and then if we need to trim more, we will. Yeah, now I can come in and clean up all this shit too. Oh, I'm gonna get this shit stuck all over my fingers. Ugh. Arts and crafts. So for sake of time, and because this is our first rough cut, I'm just using 1 1/8 inch circle template to mark my sides. I'm doing that because I have 1 1/8 inch barrel already set up on my die grinder. It just makes the process a little bit quicker and easier, gives us a nice round corner. So it's probably gonna have to be open bigger, but we'll start with that and see where it goes. Go ahead and put a fresh blade on there. It says use guard on there. Help me flip this thing over real quick. This way. There's a hole there now. It's all gonna end up getting open more, but at least for now, we've got a good baseline. We'll fit it on there and then trim whatever we need to trim, or, you know. So that's just kind of like the start of it. So we'll throw it back on there and see. Hey, would you mind helping us throw this hood back on real quick? Can you go up a little, Taylor? Don't let it down, my fingers are back here. Little more. Pretty close, little more. Huh? That's kind of cool, like that.
Maybe start it from here.
Okay.
And bring it up.
All right, so just got back from lunch. I'm feeling pretty good. All right, so now that we've got the hole cut, we've got the hood fit back on the car, test fit it back on. We're still obviously a little tight back here. We're hitting a little bit here, so this is all gonna get trimmed out. I went ahead and brought Paul out here to kind of finalize what we're gonna do for the scoop itself. Like I said before, we want something really subtle and simple and nothing too over the top. So just took a piece of scrap metal and started kind of bending. We're gonna come out to about here on the hood. And then on this 62 Impala, we do have these factory ribs in the hood. And we're basically just gonna try to utilize those and graft right into them. So we're gonna be right about there. There'll be a little bit of crown in the top of it, basically to match the rest of the hood shape. And then there's also gonna be a little bit of crown going this way, just make sure all the lines flow properly. And yeah, I think that's gonna look pretty good. So let's get after it. More layout, more lines. This is the least fun part of the process. Wow. my micrometers were on today. Okay, I think I'm 20 overall. Yeah, I'm right at 20. So we'll split that in half. Actually, I should just scribe it. I'd be more accurate. Now, whenever I'm shaping anything like this, I like giving myself a nice center line. It just allows me to make sure everything's mirrored, gives me a nice solid line to look at, and that way I can measure off both ways and make sure everything's the same, so nothing looks funky when you're looking at the car. I gotta figure out what radius this is. 1.25 inch tube. Yeah, Paul's finger brake is 1.25 inch, so I gotta find 1.25 inch tube. Okay, so obviously that's a little high. That's gonna go down significantly lower once we put that other bend in it. And it's only gonna be, right now we're like 1.5 inches. It'll probably drop down to 5/8 or so, maybe, ish. And then it's gonna taper in the back too. So really, where this tapers down, it's actually just gonna have a slight angle upward towards the end, and then we'll roll the end and then do some sort of like mesh or something in there. And then this will get cut back in here, and this will get rolled in a little bit. So basically it's gonna take this whole top of this hood and just let it roll down a little. Yeah, that ain't bad at all. So we just bent up the first two sides in our radius brake. What we're gonna go ahead and do now is we're gonna make some marks and put a taper in our second bend. That way it will sit lower in the rear and a little bit higher in the front. And we'll get that done right now. So if I go 2 1/8 in the front, on both sides, ow. And then if I go all the way down to, let's see, that was 2 1/8, so I need to taper it 2 5/8, which will give us a 1/2 inch taper all the way through. Hopefully that's enough. If not, we'll go ahead and adjust it, and we can either add to the front or take out of the rear or whatever. See how that goes. I do need a long ruler though, so I can mark this all the way across. That way I can kind of see what I'm doing. I guess that gives us a starting point. So obviously this still needs crown, but I'm lower in the back. What do you think?
I mean, you could actually take this part and roll it over.
Yeah, I'm like 1 inch long, plus or minus. All right, I'll keep messing with it. So I'm gonna hold it through, so just line it up. And if anything, I'd want it a little long. Okay. That way I can trim down. Like if you're like 20, 30 thou long, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. I can always trim down more. I'm gonna take some bend out of these. We're still gonna have to trim it back a little bit, but at least now we're flat, we can set it on there. It's funny, you talk to like a machinist or an engineer, and I know quite a few of them that'll tell you numbers don't lie. And sometimes that's true. On old cars, sometimes numbers lie. When they stamp things from the factory, sometimes things don't line up. Sometimes when things are cast, they're not all the same. So you do your best to get the measurements right, and then you gotta kind of just do a visual look at it and make sure it looks proper. When this hood was stamped, you've got 2 ribs coming down it, right? So when they stamp this thing, for whatever reason, if their dies were a hair off or whatever, it may only be a 16th, you know, or sometimes less. Sometimes it's a 32nd. But when you go to shape to it, if you try to follow everything perfect and set it on there and you stand back and look at it and you're like, well, why does that look wrong? You know, why does that not look right? Well, a 16th here and a 16th there, and you start adding all those 16ths up and you end up 3/16ths, or you end up a quarter, and then you're looking at it and you're like, whoa, what did I do wrong, you know? And then you can see how that's kind of rocking a little bit. So once we get it trimmed and kind of fit better to the hood, I'll come back in here and I'll run this through the planishing hammer, and I'll put a little bit of dome in it this way, a little bit of dome in it that way. I might even end up having to shrink this flange on both sides to get it to just kind of crown a little bit and follow the shape of the hood. All right, thank you. So if you look down the side of that, you can see it's got some shape. So now, oh, I got it backwards. You can see just a little bit of crown in it. It needs a little bit more. So I'll just go and I'll stretch both of those sides just a little bit more. And then I'll come in here and I'll run this through the planishing hammer with like a 36 die. And kind of just put a little bit of shape in there. But we're getting closer. So normally I would put a dolly behind this, but I've just got 2 little low spots. So what you can do is stick your thumb on the backside of the high and kind of tap that back down. That's pretty close right there. This needs a little bit more, but I think it'll go once I put the crown in the top. Fix that dent, and I need to add more crown right in the middle. It gets a little flat right there. So you'll be able to see light lines in this, and I mean, I wish we had a light directly above the car right now and make it a little easier, but it'll actually show you the whoops in it. So if you can catch it at the right angle, you'll see like there's a low here. So I'm gonna go to the planishing hammer and try to smooth it all out. All right, so the scoop probably looks a little bit different than what you guys saw right before lunchtime today. We had the owner come in, had a little powwow between me, the owner, and Paul, discussed exactly what we were going for once we had it roughed in, and we made the decision to take a little bit of bend out of the rear and change the angles up just a little bit, add a little bit more curve to better match the hood. So after the owner left, we brought Paul on out here, and he helped me just kind of dial in the back half of this thing and get the crown up top worked in. So basically what we did was we spent a little bit more time on the planishing hammer, swapped from a 36 die to a 24 die, ran that thing back and forth, got a little bit of dome in here, feels real nice and smooth, flows with the rest of the hood, no dents or anything like that in there, so it'll be great for body work. Now, coming to the back of this, Paul really wanted to make this look like a factory stamp piece, or like it could have come from the factory this way. So what we did is we tied our back into the same radius as the sides here, and all we did to do that was we took about an inch of solid bar stock with a flat bar welded to it, put it in our vise, and took the back end of this and hammered that edge right on over to give us the same radius we got on here. And then once we had that dialed in, we took about a 3/16-ish bend off the back and flipped this thing over and hammered it right back over the same die, just to bend that back up. So if you look back here, you'll see that it actually matches the curvature of the back of the hood. And then once this gets cut and grafted in, we'll go ahead and take this back edge and kind of pull it up just a little bit to run into the back of that. And then everything will get welded in, metal finished out, and we'll be good to go. So the next step on here is to come up here and add a flange on this lower edge. So I've taken and hammered this over that same die just to give it a slight roll to it. And then we're gonna take about 3/4 of an inch straight back, and we're gonna bend a flange down. And then up in here, we'll cut this back, fold this lower section down to the original hood, and we'll get all that welded and grafted together. And then we'll cut a hole in the centerpiece, and then we'll go back with like some mesh and make a little grill to sit back in there. So you probably won't see much of it, but at least that way, nothing will get caught up in there, nothing will blow into your engine compartment, and it'll just give a nice clean finished look. So that's what's up next. All right, so I'm gonna cut a piece at 13 and, I don't know, 5/8, 13 and 5/8. I'll go 3/4, so we're gonna come 3/4 of an inch back and then bend a 90 off of it. And that's gotta be pretty tall. Let's see what we got. Actually, I should bring a tape measure with me. If that's not an arm workout, I don't know what is. What did I say, 13 and 5/8? I hope that's right. All right, so we're gonna start with that. Put a little bendy on there. A little more, poquito más. It's gonna get welded in there, but I need to add some shape to that. So we're gonna go ahead and shrink this to that shape. Now, because this flange right here is like 2 3/4, it's gonna take a lot more shrinking to get that thing to pull. But if this was like an inch, it would go real quick. It would just, you'd see it, like just make a banana out of it. But we don't need too much. We just need a little bit of curve in there. So as you can see, I'm staying pretty close to this edge. If I come back and did this edge back here, it would start to pull a lot, but I don't want to do that. I want just enough to match the bottom side of that scoop. So I still don't think that's quite enough, but let's go ahead and check it. Oh yeah, we need a lot more. The kick is really nice, but I feel like I have more control by hand. It's a little bit more of a pain in the ass, and it's definitely a little bit more of a workout. but you can really feel when you're using this, you can feel where it bites and you can feel where it's shrinking. So as you're pushing down through it, you can really feel the whole process. I don't want to do this. This is going to take forever. I'm going to cut this flange down. There we go. See, now you can start to see where it wants to roll and curve. Closer, still not enough. Why does fab work take so long? This is why. Not to mention it's like 1,000,000 degrees in here. This is a little long too, so I'm gonna need to trim a little bit more off. All right. Yeah, we need just a little bit more right in the middle. A little more crown in there. So another thing that's happening as I'm shrinking this is it's taking that 90 that I bent up and it's turning it into like an 80. Well, is that right? I don't think that's right. Not an 80. It's opening it up. So I'll have to go back and kind of fine tune that bend. That should be pretty close. Yeah, you can see where it's kind of opening up right there. So we're not quite 90. So basically what's going to happen is once I get this fit exactly where I want it, we'll mark it, I'll start tacking. I'll tack all the way along this edge. And then, let's see. Yeah, so I'll get these corners made. This will all follow. And then on this side of the hood, we'll blend it in. So this will taper down, and then we'll make a filler piece that blends like this and kind of wraps that corner and connects it all together. And then this piece will meet up with where this bends down here. That'll get welded, and then we'll put a hole in it. And then we can decide what kind of mesh we're gonna put in there or anything like that. So kind of a simple, clean way to do it. And then it also allows us enough space to mount it in there. So we'll have space for mounting holes. And all right, I need to take that back to 90. It's kind of twisted too. I wonder if I could bend some of that out. That's much better. People don't realize how much they can bend stuff out just kind of with their hands. Or Paul, if you watch Paul sometimes, he's notorious for just taking his thumbs and putting a bend into something. And most of the time it works great for Paul. Works good for me sometimes too. There we go. I think that's actually better. I think that worked just fine. So we're gonna 90 straight back off of there. So we'll end up with just a little bit of a gap in there, which actually will stiffen this thing up quite a bit. It's already significantly stiffer since we've ran it through the planishing hammer, added some shape in here, and obviously the bends here, the roll here, the bend back here. It's stiffened this whole panel up quite a bit, but this will add a lot up front. And then tying it into the factory piece that we roll down, that'll stiffen it up a lot on the underside. I like that. Now, and what's nice about doing it this way too, is if you look at that radius that we put in here, it's really nice and even. And in our panel here, we've got a couple little whoops in it. So, but because this is basically gonna act as the structure, we can use it as a guide when we fit it up in here and start tacking. And we can actually pinch this all together or hammer it together, and we'll end up with a nice, even, consistent line all the way across it without having to do much more hammer work. So you can kind of see that right there. We'll pinch all that down. Yeah, so that crown pretty much follows the top. All right, so we've taken and welded in our flange piece. Now we still have to make our corner pieces and get all that tied in, which we'll do next. But now that I've got this middle section welded in, I'm coming back here with a file and cleaning up that edge and just making sure we've got a nice straight edge on here, nice and clean. And one of the cool things about using a file to do this rather than an angle grinder is it allows you to keep everything really nice and straight and smooth. So we're using some 18 gauge material here. So any little imperfections that are in our hammer work, anything real small, couple thousandths, you know, by using this file, we're actually going to take and smooth all that down, and then I'll come back with a DA and DA it all and Scotch-Brite it, metal finish it out and clean it up nice. But once we're done, everything will be nice and smooth. So just helps out the body guys and makes the rest of the process go a little bit quicker. All right, so we finished hand filing our front edge. I haven't made those corner pieces yet. We're gonna go ahead and wait until we cut out the bottom of the hood and do our flanging down there. I'll come in and I'll make a kind of a trick little corner piece and tie it all in together so it all flows really nicely. I went ahead, set it back on here. We've trimmed our flanges up just a little bit more, closer to the inside edge of the factory stamping. So right now I'm gonna go ahead and just pull it back off. I'm gonna get it dicomed out, set it right back in where we want it. Probably double check our measurements, make sure it's perfectly square and fits exactly where it needs to go. And then I'll go ahead and scribe it. I'll cut to my scribe lines and we will start fitting this in and tacking it in, and we'll see how it goes. Let that dry here for a minute. Now that we've got this pretty dry, you can see my initial Sharpie marks that were just kind of roughed in. You can kind of see them through the dicum, so we'll use those as a baseline to get it back squared up. And then I'll take some quick measurements and make sure we're exactly where it needs to be and scribe it and cut it. Yeah, Paul is making quite a bit of noise today. That's all right, it means we're getting shit done. Great. I think that's pretty close to where we need to be. I just want to make sure it like looks proper, you know what I mean? You want to look over that one more time before I scribe it and cut it? Cool. All right. There's definitely no going back now. I wonder how many people are going to freak out and say how badly we ruined a factory hood. Why would you guys ever do that to this car? I just cut a big fucking hole in like a $5,000 hood. Oh, that's like $500 worth of that hood. Yeah. All right, so now that I've got my hole cut, I've got everything filed, I've fit my scoop back in, made sure everything fits nice. I went ahead and started tacking in the back here, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and work up pretty evenly up both sides. I do have some hood structure underneath right here, which won't allow me to hammer these out. So basically what I'm trying to do is utilize my tacks to keep this thing straight. So as I tack, each tack is gonna shrink. So it's gonna pull this way, it's gonna pull that way, and basically as long as I just keep it even on both sides up until I get past my structure, I should be able to keep this thing pretty straight. And then once I get past my structure, I can go ahead and put a dolly underneath there and hammer those tacks out and make sure that everything is fit just like we want it to. And then I'll come back, I'll grind all my tacks down, I'll DA it nice and clean, and then I'll go back and weld it out and metal finish it. So we'll take you along for that as well. All right, so I just finished up welding this sucker in, and as you can see, it did distort just a little bit, kind of shrunk in a little bit on us, which is totally normal. Kind of expected that to happen. So we're gonna go back and planish all the welds out all the way around this thing and get everything back where we want it, and then we'll flip it over and move on to the bottom side. All right, so we just wrapped up some hammer and metal finishing work on here. It could use a little more hammer work in the creases and things like that, but we're gonna go ahead and move on and get the underside wrapped up before we do any more. I went ahead and shaped this piece. It's 2 sections. I got a weld seam down the middle here, got that all metal finished out, and it will go ahead and slip down in here and fit right in through here. You can see we've done it in some of our past videos, but basically what I do is I dicom, I cleco my panel on, I go ahead and make some scribe lines, use a few of these Cleco holes here, and I'm actually gonna cut tabs out around them and offset those tabs. That way when I put my panel back in, I can Cleco it back in place and the rest of it will fit flush. So I can start tacking it, and then as I get to where those Cleco tabs are, I'll go ahead and cut those off, and then I can hammer everything back out once it's all welded in, make sure everything's nice and metal finished and nice and clean. All right, so I've got everything cut, filed to our scribe line. I went ahead and used our trusty pliers here. These are super sweet. They save a lot of time, they make it a lot easier, and it ensures that you are right back where you belong with your part. And if you don't have a set, I recommend making a set. I do think there are a few companies that make some. I don't have any experience with those. I don't think there's anything better than handmade. So if you've got the skills to do it, I would make a set. It'll save you a lot of time. But yeah, you can see all the tabs right there. And I just cut them off, and then I can come back and hammer everything nice and flat, and then keep tacking it and weld it out. So we just wrapped up all the metal finishing on our hood scoop. We've got the hood back on the car. We wanted to kind of see it all together, give us an idea of how it's gonna look finished. The only thing left that we do have to do in here is we're gonna have Matt go ahead and design a grill for this and custom CNC machine a grill. So that will be done before the car is finished. But other than that, we are super happy with how it turned out. It's not really like super in your face, but it gets the job done. And we really dig it. So let us know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.